All right, let's dive straight into an epic, mythic legend, unearthing the forbidden, truly terrifying lore of Midworld. In this explainer, we're going to look at the architecture of the All and the entity that desperately wishes to tear it all down. Imagine for a second being a terrified citizen of this universe, living in the long shadow of this legend. You'd only dare to whisper the name we're unmasking today, that wretched, spider-blooded entity known as the Crimson King.
Seriously? How dare he? We really have to ask ourselves how a cosmic parasite could ever mistake his own pure insanity for some kind of grand philosophy. The source material frames his desire for dominion over existence not as a rightful claim, but as an absolute delusion. He's just a petulant heir to a throne of nothingness, trying to convince the universe that his madness is actually mastery. And so the absolutely crucial point is this. Despite his majestic title, this guy is no ruler. True regal authority implies stewardship, right? It's about building and leading. The Crimson King, he is literally just a cosmic tantrum wrapped in a red cloak. He demands obedience not through respect or divine right, but through the screeching, flailing demands of a being who just cannot handle the reality he lives in. To truly understand the depths of his madness, we have to look at what he is fighting against. The breathtaking majesty of the Dark Tower. It isn't just a stone structure. It's the vibrant, creative core of all existence. It is literally the heartbeat of every sunset, every first kiss, and every heroic sacrifice across a billion worlds. It represents absolutely everything that is beautiful and enduring. And this brilliantly illustrates his totally flawed perspective. Where a billion worlds and everyday citizens see a beautiful tapestry of life and the majesty of creation, the Crimson King looks up at the glorious Dark Tower and sees only a hateful cage. It offends him simply by existing, just because it's something vast and magnificent that he can't control. Let's examine his tragic origins to understand why he's like this. He wasn't born from nothing. He was actually born of the noble blood of Arthur Eld, a lineage of true kings. But that noble legacy was deeply, deeply curdled by the primordial filth of the Prim. This toxic mixture of noble lineage and primordial corruption completely twisted his mind, stripping away any potential for true regal greatness. Ultimately, he is the perfect expression of the spoiled child archetype. Because he cannot rule the light, he petulantly demands the dark. Think about that for a second. Instead of stepping up to his noble blood, he acts out. It's basically a cosmic version of a child smashing a toy just because they weren't allowed to play with it first. His entire twisted philosophy can be distilled down to a single terrifying thought. If I cannot create, I must unmake. His reign of terror is driven by a pathetic rejection of creative power. True kings build, but operating on this purely childish, destructive logic, he realizes he lacks the power of creation, and so he commits himself entirely to unmaking everything that is. Now, you might think a being with such massive, destructive ambition would lead from the front, right? Like a dark warrior on a black steed. But no, the truth is entirely different. What's so fascinating about this supposed Dark Lord is the absolute whimpering cowardice at the very core of his strategy. So where does he hide while he tries to burn the world down? He cowers in the deep shadows of Lukasero Rus. The text explicitly describes him as whimpering and shrieking out of sight. It paints a picture not of a terrifying sovereign, but of a pathetic, frightened creature lurking in the dark, too terrified to even face the reality he wants to destroy. And from those hidden shadows, he forces others to do all of his dirty work. He uses the Tahin and the Lowmen as his enforcers, but the most cruel part? He relies on the Breakers. These aren't soldiers, they are innocent psychics who have been cruelly enslaved, literally ripped from their lives to serve his twisted agenda. You can see this cowardly strategy play out step by step. First, he enslaves those innocent breakers. Second, he forces them to systematically snap the beams that hold up the Dark Tower, dismantling reality piece by piece. And third, he just hides in the shadows and lets them burn the house down for him. It is the absolute pinnacle of cowardice. Some people in the lore mistakenly call him a chess master because of his complex web of enforcers. But actually, scratch that. He's only a chess master in the sense that he's willing to flip the entire table. He hasn't outsmarted anyone, he just realizes he can never truly win the game of existence, so he violently scatters the pieces so no one else can play either. This is what we call ultimate nihilism. It's a pure, concentrated desire for total nothingness that demands the destruction of reality simply because he can't be the center of it. It isn't some deep philosophical stance on the pain of life. It's purely selfish. If the universe doesn't revolve entirely around him, he decides it has no right to be. Put yourself in the shoes of a terrified citizen of Midworld. He would gladly trade your vibrant tapestry and every single world that follows, with all their color, life, and emotion, for the gray, howling void of Discordia. He wants to wipe away the canvas and replace it with a silent emptiness, a cold void where absolutely nothing exists or ever will exist again. And why? Why does he want this silent, empty nothingness? For the most spiteful reason imaginable. His ultimate desire is to turn existence into a cold void simply so he can be the only entity left screaming in that endless darkness. He wants an empty audience for his endless tantrum. It's an incredibly pathetic image of isolation by choice.
The mythology describes him perfectly here. He is entropy with a crown, a red-eyed gargoyle of pure, concentrated spite. I absolutely love this imagery because it strips away all the fake grandeur. He's just decay pretending to be royalty, fueled entirely by a petty, concentrated spite against the beauty of the all.
Now, to the gunslinger Roland, he is a brother in blood, sharing that ancient lineage of Arthur Eld. It's a deeply personal, twisted family tie. But to the rest of existence? To everyone else? He is nothing but a deadly cancer. A literal sickness trying its hardest to kill the host body of the universe.
So what is the ultimate result of his pathetic attempt to destroy the Grand Dark Tower? He ends up trapped. So let him stay trapped, howling from his balcony at the very top of the glorious Dark Tower he so desperately despises. The very cage he hated becomes his eternal, literal prison, leaving him to shriek uselessly into the wind. Because honestly, at the end of the day, he is merely a red smudge on the canvas of a reality that is far stronger, far more beautiful, and far more enduring. His chaotic, petty hates is just a temporary stain. The creative heartbeat of a billion worlds is always going to outlast the destructive desires of a cowardly, petulant parasite. Which leaves us with this final, defiant thought for you to ponder. What does true endurance really mean when faced with the empty, howling void of a spoiled child's cosmic tantrum? Reality is vibrant, enduring, and built on the heartbeat of a billion worlds. The void he seeks is totally empty. I leave it to you to decide which is truly stronger.